Hey class, I'm sorry I'm a little late posting this video, but I wanted to do a quick review of chapters 1 through 4. I have my notes in front of me, and it wouldn't be a bad idea for you to have your notes in front of you as well. So chapter 1 was on melody. One of the most important things to remember about melody is that it is a series of pitches one at a time. And by pitches, I mean how high or low a sound is. The melody is the tune of music, or the part that gets stuck in your head. There are other terms in this chapter such as contour, climax, cadence, and phrase that are all important to know as well, but they're pretty basic vocabulary terms. When we get into chapter 2, we talk about rhythm. The book uses sort of a vague definition. They say what moves the music forward. Rhythm is patterns of sound and silence, and I like that definition a little bit better than what is in our textbook, so you may see that on the quiz. So the big difference between rhythm and beat is that the beat is a steady and consistent pulse. It's not the interesting part of the music. Rhythm, like 1, 2, 3, and 4, would be something that changes patterns of sound and silence, okay? There's also meter, which is the feelings or groupings of beat. But if we see meter written down on a page of music, we draw little lines in it that are called measure lines, or the space between the line is called measures. So I like to think of meter as the feeling of divisions of beat or time, and measure as writing it down on paper. There was also a term called compound meter that I wanted to focus on. So most types of meter, or simple meter, you feel 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or 2 subdivisions or sections of beat. In compound meter, it's the music that you might hold a lighter up to and sway at a concert or something, and that's called compound meter, and it has divisions of 3 instead of 2. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that would be compound meter, and something you should definitely know for exams. All right, the next section that we're going to talk about, chapter 3, is on harmony. So finally we get to where we have more notes going on. We have multiple notes at the same time. So if we had a duet and one person was singing the melody, but the other person wanted to harmonize with them or sing additional pitches at the same time. Another way that we can harmonize is by playing a guitar or playing a piano. And what we usually hear on those instruments are called chords, which are 3 or more notes at a time. Now there is a specific type of chord that has just 3 notes, and it's called a triad. It's not too hard to remember because of the tri in it, meaning 3. And a triad has a specific way of being written where it skips every other note of a scale, which a scale is just 1 note at a time going up the staff of music. So if I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, okay, and I picked 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, that would be a triad, okay? And if I sang them simultaneously, which I can't possibly do, so that's a triad. Now, that series of notes again that I sang, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's called a scale. Most scales will have 8 pitches in them, or if you look at that very first note called the tonic, which is really important, it tells us the name of the scale, tells us the key that we're in. If you've ever seen a movie where they say, all right, we're gonna sing this song in the key of D, that's what they're talking about. That's the note or pitch that it's starting on. Now a jump from the bottom note of the scale to the top note of the scale, that interval or space between of 8 pitches is called an octave. Again, it's got the OCT or oct, meaning 8. So we've got the terms chord, triad, octave, scale, and tonic. Now the whole idea of music being based on the tonic is called tonality. 99% of the music that we hear and is written is called tonal music, or it's based on tonality. There's this teeny tiny fraction of music that isn't based on the tonic. It's based on mathematical patterns. And I did give you some videos that you could listen to. That music's called atonal, and it tends to sound like movie thriller music or sort of gobbledygook, organized chaos in music. So I did throw that in there, which the textbook doesn't really discuss all that much. The last important concept of chapter 3 is called consonance and dissonance, or dissonance and consonance. Dissonance, which sort of sounds like a negative connotation, is when you have a combination of notes or maybe a chord that doesn't really sound good together. Just sounds like something's off, and internally in a human being it causes this sense of tension or anxiety. And those things are actually really important to music, because not all music is pretty all the time. It has to sometimes have those crunchy sounding notes, as I like to call them, so that you can feel different emotions like pain or sadness. But most of those notes that are dissonant, or the sound of dissonance, will then resolve to a more agreeable sounding combination of notes, and that's called consonance. So dissonance and consonance are two tools that composers use in order to exemplify more emotion within their compositions. Okay, we're on to the last chapter in this first test, this chapter 1 through 4. So chapter 4 is about the organization of musical sounds. It talks more about that scale that we were talking about before. A scale is, one note after another on the musical staff. So if I started on C, I went C, D, E, F, G. Remember, we roll over again to A, because musical alphabet's only up to G. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So C to C is an octave. Now, all those little intervals between C to D and D to E and E to F, sometimes they're called a whole step and sometimes they're called a half step. There is a chart in your textbook. It has a little piano keyboard, and it shows you how the black keys on the piano, from a white key to a black key, is called a half step, or a black key to a white key is called a half step. And there's two cases where a white key doesn't, from one white key to another white key, doesn't have a black key. Those are also called half steps. So two half steps add up to a whole step. Now this itself, you don't really have to know, but when we talk about building scales, they use different patterns of whole steps and half steps, or different patterns of the white keys and the black keys. And no matter what note you start on, that scale, that type of scale, like major or a minor scale, will always pretty much sound the same as far as the character of that scale if you use the same pattern. So if I sing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or if I go a little higher, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I use the same pattern of whole steps and half steps to sort of make it sound the same. Now, if I go to a minor scale, that first one was a major scale. If I go to a minor scale, it uses a different pattern of whole steps and half steps. So I might sing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it sort of sounds a little maybe Middle Eastern or something like that, as a different pattern of whole steps and half steps, no matter what pitch I start that scale on. So major scales tend to be described as sounding happy, chipper, joyful, and minor scales tend to be described as sounding sad or mysterious or melancholy. There's a third type of scale I like to focus on, and that's called the chromatic scale. The chromatic scale is composed of all half steps, so literally it's every single key on the keyboard on the piano. Like if you were ever a kid and you tried to race up the piano playing all the keys, and it would be like do 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 do. It's got all these little teeny tiny intervals in it because it plays all the notes, not just F or F sharp, or doesn't pick or choose between the white key or the black key. It ends up having more pitches in it, and so it has 12 different pitches in the chromatic scale. So it sounds quite a bit different from major or minor. Those black keys on the piano have a name. They're called accidentals, and we call them flats or sharps. There's a flat version and a sharp version for each key. Sharps tell us to play the next black key up, or to raise the pitch half of a step. And flat cymbals tell us to lower the key or lower the pitch by half of a step. So that is important to know as well. And I think that pretty much wraps up my quick review of chapters 1 through 4. I hope that helps you on the quiz, which I will be posting that. I'm going to give you a little bit of an extension because I got to this video late. So I hope that's helpful for you. If you have any questions, please let me know, and have a great week.